guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Canada Burned Down the White House, the only war the USA ever lost. I don't think I've ever heard of this, Canada burned down the White House. I know the White House has been burned a few times, but I didn't expect for it to be Canada. They're supposed to be very polite, but I don't know, I'm very intrigued about this, so let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
Known as being a force. They've never lost a war in the history, except for that one time Canada burned down their White House.
Actually, I didn't know that. The US has never lost a war. That seems right, but I've seen it like this. I am a little surprised.
Thanks for watching Informal History. My name is Adam, and the story of the White House being burned by Canada is especially interesting to me, and let's start off with how it all began, which actually takes place in my own backyard. The War of 1812 was a conflict between Britain and the United States from 1812 to 1815. The War of 1812 was also the entire personality of every headline and every newspaper from 2012 to 2015 here in the Niagara region, and I'm sick of talking about it, but it's an interesting story. And the War of 1812 was really the only one that the US started and didn't win. In the 1800s, America...
It's a very American thing to not get into fights unless you know that you're gonna win. So it doesn't surprise me. I think, yes, we're only going to wars if we're sure that we're going to win. Except for this case, of course. But it happened, what, 200 years ago? 200 years ago? More than 200 years ago.
America was on a quest to expand west. This could easily be a 35-part series, and in fact, I actually did the Donner Party episode.
Wars usually are like that. There's a lot to say about wars.
Which is right here, which is people from the east trying to get to the west. But what's
crazy story
a lot of the time were Native Americans, people who were there before them, and they were essentially taking over the land that belonged to these Native Americans, and they would put up a fight. But how would they fight Americans? Well, they got help. Americans suspected Britain, which also had a colony just north of the US, called British North America, Upper Canada, Lower Canada, present-day Canada, and they suspected...
I didn't know that was the name of Canada 250 years ago. That's a little crazy to me. Okay, then. It doesn't have anything to do with Canada, but it's kind of crazy.
That they were helping the Native Americans fight against the Americans actually showing up and taking their land. In true US fashion, this irritated them. They became very irate and decided, let's start a war and start becoming violent in order to take this part of the landmass that we...
It's just a story as old as time.
Deemed to be ours. Now keep in mind, this is a very simplified version. The War of 1812 is absolutely a robust topic that we could go on about for an entire series.
It is.
But let's just break it down into a 10-minute video. On top of this, American seamen were in prison, Britain was interfering with trade, and the US had a bit of a fetish for taking land, and they wanted what is now Canada for themselves as well. Now again, Canada was not actually...
I'm wondering if it's because they already won the US, so they were probably, you know what, we should expand since we were so successful in this previous war. Maybe we should get into this business and expand our territory. I'm pretty sure that was the case. They were very confident, probably, since they've already won.
Canada until 1867, and this happened 50 plus years before that. So at the time, Quebec was Upper Canada, what is now Ontario was Lower Canada, just as a quick reference for the history that you didn't learn about Canada in school. And Canada was known as British North America, although I'll call it Canada for the rest of the video, and it was a territory of Great Britain. And Canada itself, even being called Canada sometimes at this time, was a fragmented...
They still called it Canada. Quite important, I believe.
Nation. They were considering themselves a nation. Everybody came over the Atlantic and now they're settling in this brand new place, and it was fragmented. They didn't really see themselves as congealed or a society yet. It was something that was a little bit too new. So this new war defending themselves against the Americans was Canada's first real Canadian act, where everybody had to join forces together and defend their now native
Apparently, we're a country now.
Land. Kind of a unification and a new sense of actual nationhood.
Fast forward to June of 1813. This is when Laura Secord heard of an impending attack from the Americans on what is now Canada. She knew that they were going to be coming across the Niagara River, which is the river that Niagara Falls pours into and separates modern-day Canada from the US. She knew this attack was impending, she knew it was going to happen now, and she had to do something. She knew the right person to talk to for the job was Lieutenant Fitzgibbon. Lieutenant Fitzgibbon could be found not that far away, at the John DeQ house. The problem was Laura Secord's homestead was in Queenston, Ontario. Queenston is modern-day Niagara Falls, very close to where the falls actually are. She had to make her way over 32 kilometers through swamps, brush, prairie. No matter where she went, there is no trail, there are no roads, and as she's traversing...
Of course there are no roads, this is the 1800s. And did she do it on her own? That was very brave.
These streams and bogs and ponds, she's wearing nothing but flip-flops. The Niagara region has nothing...
Well, probably not plastic flip-flops. I'm pretty sure they had boots, but I understand the sentiment.
But streams separating every which way. Laura Secord had to swim across some of these, and she finally found her way.
I would imagine that would have been awful because it was very cold. And even colder back in those days, just because I think the planet was a little bit colder in general, so that must have been terrible.
At the John DeQ house, the residence of a man who did much for Niagara, including being a founding member of the Welland Canal Company, the canal that now joins Lake Ontario to Lake Erie, and that's the reason billions of dollars of trade is possible in the region. By the time Laura Secord got to the John DeQ house, she had time because the Americans were stalled by 2 full days, allowing Lieutenant Fitzgibbon to mobilize a defense and repel the attack by the Americans.
Why did they stop? Why did the Americans didn't get there in time?
Laura Secord now is a heroine of Canada and a giant inspiration around here. Schools named after her and a chocolatier as well. Bridges like this one were erected in her memory as her footsteps were exactly right here underneath us right now.
I wanted to do this video in the winter, which is why all the B-roll of this house is covered in snow, but this is the actual plot of land where Laura Secord walked to. This is Sir John DeQ's house, or the remains of it, because it did burn down earlier in the last century. I want to do...
Everything's getting burned. The Whitehouse, this John Q house, everything's getting burned.
To be at the John DeQ house to do this, but they were mowing the lawn yesterday when I was filming and it was too loud and noisy. Now Canada's a bit upset at this point and decides to go on the offensive. This coupled with the April attack of York, now Toronto, which at the time was the capital. Believe it or not, Toronto is not the capital of Canada.
York? They had a York as well?
Ottawa, Ontario is, and it's right here. And this had Canada retaliate, and eventually on August 24th, 1814, launching attacks on Washington. British forces were fresh from victories in Europe following the defeat of Napoleon, and they turned their attention to North America. In August, a British...
Oh, right. At this particular moment in time, of course, Napoleon was getting into war in Europe. Kind of crazy to think it was the same time period.
Expeditionary force under the command of Rear Admiral George Cockburn, spelled like this but pronounced Coburn, and Major General Robert Ross sailed up the Chesapeake Bay towards Washington, D.C. As we've seen before rather recently, the American capital was ill-prepared for what is a siege. That's what was trying to be done. Keep in mind.
Crazy to think this has happened twice already, and that, well, probably more.
The US tried to take Canada's capital. Canada said, nuh-uh, I don't think so. We're gonna take your capital. And when they got into Washington, D.C., they really just had the lay of the land to do whatever they wanted. British forces advanced, and President James Madison and other government officials quickly and efficiently evacuated the city. They left behind basically a token defense force that they knew really wasn't going to do anything, but they just didn't want to lay down and let Canada, or Britain at the time, do whatever they wanted.
Yeah,
but they did, because British troops, including British troops from Lower Canada, marched right in and started setting fire to a bunch of the buildings, including the Capitol.
That must have been crazy to live. I am imagining people that live there, and we have to get out of here. This is going off the rails.
Building, which apparently still doesn't have that good of defense, and the White House. This seems insane today. Can you imagine reading a headline saying the White House is being burned, the White House is on fire? That would never happen. And if it did, whoever did it would feel the full wrath of the greatest military to ever exist. But this was a much...
They wouldn't even get there. Let's be real. They wouldn't even get to the point of the thing burning down, or just we're attempting to burn this place. No, they wouldn't.
Different time and a rude awakening, and
of course, yes, different times. No, these days, well, in those days, yes, of course, that could happen, but it's kind of unimaginable to think that this could happen today.
Opener to the US thinking, well, we are a pretty new nation. I can't believe this is happening to us, but it definitely did. And again, Canadian units, including militia and regular troops from British North America, played a huge role in the British expedition. And they fought alongside British forces in engagements leading up to the burning of Washington, including the capture of Fort George and battles in Upper and Lower Canada. So if you want to see me do a full episode on the War of 1812, including Fort George, which is basically in my backyard, and Fort Mississauga, which is actually the most haunted place in all of Canada, but played a crucial part in the War of 1812 in the defense.
You can't say something like this and just live past it. What do you mean it's the most haunted place? That's near Ontario, right? Mississauga? Near Ontario, I think.
Defense against the US, and also there's a part there where you can literally read War of 1812 soldiers writing in the brick that is etched there to this day. You can still see that, which is kind of cool. Let me know in the comments section below. Is this a good topic? Do you want to see more about this interesting war that you probably didn't know about? And as always, please hit subscribe. And because we do videos every weekend, that means I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, this was wild. Yes, I didn't even know. I think the Canadians have a reputation for being, again, kind of nice people and just nice and polite. So obviously that's the reputation they have in this modern time period. But yes, back in those days, probably wasn't like that. I think it's crazy to think that apparently because Canada at this moment in time, apparently it was settlements and just a bunch of settlements, but they weren't really unified. As in, there wasn't any sense of belonging there because it was a very new nation. And while the U.S., of course, was also a new nation as well. Oh, that's the thing. All of the North America was just a very new thing. It was just everyone was experimenting. We're creating something new. We're doing something. Well, not that it hasn't ever done before, but just something new. We're just learning the ropes. We're just figuring things out. So it's funny that the way to do that is, through literal wars. It's funny that apparently the whole Canadian sentiment of, we are Canadian, the first act of patriotism, probably, yes, let's call it patriotism, the fact that they all had to unite because they were feeling, we are feeling Canadian, we are united, and we have to join towards our common enemy, which in this case was the US. And it's funny that the way to join them and to join forces and to create this unified nation and this country was, we're the enemy is the US and it's to the expense of the US. I think it's kind of funny. Maybe it's not really exactly that, but I don't know. I find it really, really curious that, it was because of the US. They couldn't do it on their own. Maybe at some point in time, if this hadn't happened, maybe it wouldn't been the US, maybe it would have been some other country. But it's funny to think, the first sentiment of being Canadian, they did, and we are feeling very Canadian. It was because we're joining forces against the US. It's our common enemy. But it's also really funny as well. I don't know if funny it's the right word. I think it's interesting, probably would be more of an appropriate term. Is Canada and for as a matter of fact also the US. I think when all the colonies started, their settlements, their colonies, everyone came from other places, either France or Great Britain or Ireland, Scotland, whatever. They all came from different places. And I am wondering how and when specifically those people felt, we are part of this new nation, we are part of this new thing. Because I'm wondering, for the first couple of generations, obviously the first immigrants basically probably must have felt, and because the country technically was a colony, so of course they're going to be feeling, we're going to be feeling British or we're going to be feeling French, depending on their country of origin, and their children and their grandchildren. Specifically, of course, because yes, we have to pay dues to the crown, so of course it's our monarch, and we are feeling British or we are feeling French. Although, of course, you're in this new place. And I'm wondering where specifically does that point in time stop and those people started to feel, no, we haven't been British or French or whatever it is for instance, about 20 years ago, I don't know. I'm wondering where exactly did that happen? Because I think it's quite hard to maintain, obviously they're maintaining the ties, of course, the crown and all of that. But because it's so far away and they are literally settling a country, they are creating a nation. and it's hard to maintain power. And of course they had generals and all of that, but I think it's hard to maintain that sense of belonging to something and to a country when you're the Atlantic is just over, it's separating us. So it is very hard, and again, especially because you're in a new place, it's a foreign land. Those people didn't really know anything. They're settling it. So it is a feeling of I can't help but feel like I belong to this territory and this plot of land. So of course you're going to be feeling at some point I am feeling very nationalistic, and I'm not feeling the ties anymore through the motherland, whatever that motherland is to them, either is France or the United Kingdom. So at one point, it's no, we are feeling Canadian. So I think, or we are feeling, well, the opposite. Of course, they're feeling American, which I think, again, it's kind of, I know, maybe a little bit sad. They're cutting the ties. Obviously, in the case of the U.S., well, they had to lead a war. But it's because, again, after several generations, there were I think we're building something new. We're doing this. And we're feeling American. We're feeling something new. And Canada, it was the same case. There were we are actually feeling Canadian. We are something different. And this is what it actually means to be Canadian. And of course, at this particular point in time, nobody really knew what that meant. Yes, you're kind of building things along as you go and as you live. But it's like life, right? You don't really know how and what it means, I don't know, to be human until you actually live your life. So it's kind of like this, obviously not exactly the same thing, but I think it's a little bit similar. Yes, what does it mean to be Canadian? I don't know, we're just going to figure things out as we create this country. And I think that's kind of like a beautiful thing. I believe we are creating countries, we're creating nations, and we're seeing this stories like this actually show us what was it like to be in, obviously not the war part, that's horrible, but this just general sentiment that lead to that, I think, again, is quite beautiful, sad, yes, but beautiful in a way. But as it for the war itself and the burning of the White House, well, yeah, that's crazy to think. I know the White House I'm pretty sure it has been burned, or maybe there's been fires, but I think there has been more of an internal thing of, there was some sort of accident, yeah, something of the sort, but not people or enemies came and stormed the Capitol. Well, yeah, that happened recently, but it wasn't exactly this, and obviously they didn't literally burn down the White House. That seems crazy to me. Yes, like he said, it would be an insane thing to happen. No, it wouldn't happen in this day and age. Probably that's why they had the president. They were like, never again, this is not going to happen. And that's why they put all the measures in place. And that's maybe why the U.S. military and the U.S. sort of foreign policy is the way it is. Maybe this traumatized them to the point where they were like, never again. And it must have been crazy to live in Washington back in that time. I don't know how settled it was and how were the people that actually live there. I don't really know. What's the story? Probably, again, must have been a crazy thing, a scary thing, but well, yes, wars and enemies storming your city. Probably, yes, of course, it is kind of scary thing, but it seemed the White House, maybe, I don't know if for the people back in those days meant what it means in this day and age. Because the White House is more, yes, of course, it's a building and all of that, but it's more about what it represents. So seeing the image, obviously they didn't have TVs back in those days or social media to, take a picture or see a video. But it must have been quite an insane thing to just see what it represents. And again, it's the White House is more about what it represents than the actual building itself. And it must have been an insane thing to see it burn. It's we're doomed. We're everything. It's pack it up, you guys. It's over. I would have thought that it was a very ominous sign. I don't know. That's what I believe. But maybe back in those days, because everything was very new, maybe the White House didn't mean, I think, what it means for people right now, because I think those I think context is everything. And yes, history changes a lot of things, and probably yes, now we see it as a symbol, but it's because we have all the context and all the cultural baggage. But maybe back in those days they didn't really have it because everything was very new. So it's maybe they're burning the building and that's it, and it wasn't something like, oh my god, I can't believe this. And the Laura Secord, something of the sort. What an incredible feat. I get why she's a national hero. I've never heard of her, but apparently in Canada she's super famous. And I would kind of like to go. I'm wondering if people do the whole like a pilgrimage or something of the sort, because apparently there's a little sign that commemorates the path where she led, or where the house actually was, the house of the general that she had to warn. But I'm wondering if people do the whole, we have to follow the path. Maybe they didn't really know. Right now, we don't really know specifically what kind of path she took, what kind of road she took, because like he said, it wasn't an actual road. Obviously, there weren't any roads. It was just the woods. But I think they know roughly where she came from, this place, and she went to the other. So that's how they know how many miles she had to walk. But I'm wondering if people do this. As I don't know what would be the purpose. Maybe because you like her and you admire her and want to do this, or because you want to experiment how of a crazy feat that was. But I'm wondering if people do this. Maybe not. Maybe it's not really a thing that you can do because of the wildness of it all. I don't know, but it's very interesting. I would love to read or learn more about this woman because she sounded incredible. But that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.